Hey everybody, my name's Ben and today I've got 15 tips for Delta Force Hawk Ops extraction mode that you probably didn't know, including how to make your gunshots far easier to see, how to make climbing much quicker and easier, and also the medic's hidden extra special ability. I'll put a full chapter listing down below. Don't forget to drop a like and a sub if you enjoyed the video, and let me know in the comments which tip you found most useful. So first up, I'm going to talk about safe boxes and how you can use an upgraded one to extract more gear safely. So by default in the game, you have a safe box which has 2 slots in it. And this safe box allows you to place items in it when you're in an operation, and even if you die and don't extract, you'll still keep the items in the safe box. But you can actually get upgraded safe boxes that have more slots, such as 4 or even 6. And these you can acquire through various means. You might find them in events, missions, stuff like this. And if you do find one through an event like you can at the moment, then in order to actually use this safe box, you need to be on the Start tab here. Then at the bottom of the page, click on the button that says Collection, go over to the Items tab, and you'll see the Advanced Safe Box there. Select that and hit Use, and then you need to go back to your stash, click on your safe box, and it will bring up an option to select different available ones. From there, you can just select your Advanced Safe Box, Premium, or whatever you've unlocked, click to use that, and then you'll have your much larger safe box available to use for the period of time that you have it unlocked for. A great way to make your hit markers, your shots, your gunshots much easier to see in the game is changing the color of the blood. This is something you can do by going into game settings, and on the first page, the game tab, you'll see you've got the hit effect color, and you can select here between 5 different presets. You might want to do this just to make it easier to see, or if you're colorblind, you might find one of them better as well. Obviously, by default it's red, but you can change between a green color, a sort of pink purple option, a light blue cyan kind of color, and a yellow color as well. I find the pinky purple one quite easy to see, a bit easier than red, but play around with it and you might find one that works best for you. Obviously really useful to be able to know if you've definitely hit someone, so worth having a play with this if you think it's going to make it easier for you to see those shots land. The medic actually has a hidden ability and another hidden control that not many people have realized. First up, the smaller one, when you're using your smoke screen, if you actually keep the left mouse button held down when you fire it, you can steer the little UAV to the side, and you can make the long trail of smoke follow the path of the UAV rather than just being in a straight line. Cooler than that though is if you're using the other smoke grenade, the single hive tech smoke grenade. When you put this down, if you then fire your healing pistol into it, it's going to turn the cloud green and actually make it into a healing cloud of smoke that you and your teammates can move into to get heals from. It's a really cool little ability. It does say it when you look at more details on the operator's menu, but I imagine most of us don't really spend too much time reading through every little detail in the menus. Another useful thing to get in the habit of in the menus is favoriting items. So when you're looking at your stash, you can click things in it with the left mouse button and you can mark them with the little star button here, or you can right click them and select mark as well. And this doesn't really seem to do very much when you're just looking at your stash, but it's actually really useful in game if you mark up items that you want. For instance, what I find quite useful is you can actually go to your black site, you can look at the items you need to upgrade it next, say your stash, and then these items it shows here, you can actually click each of these individually and you can select to star them and mark them as favorites. And then if you go through and you mark all of the items you need for your black site upgrades as favorites, then when you're in a mission and you see that item on the floor and pick it up, it'll actually tell you in game that you've picked up a favorited item, and it'll even prioritize moving those into your safe box depending on your settings. As well as that, when you then get back to your stash after a game and you're going through trying to sell things, you can right click on stuff, and when you're going to go and sell, you can see at the bottom whether that's marked as favorite or not. So this is a really handy way if you wanted to mark up black site stuff, maybe stuff that you might use to exchange for certain good guns or armor. You can go and find the items that you need to do that, mark them as favorite, and then when you're in your stash, you're not going to accidentally sell them or auction them if you might want to keep them. And it's going to be a nice way of just making sure you slowly gather the stuff and make those upgrades or those acquisitions of good armor and guns a lot easier. A really handy setting to know about if you're trying to do some jump puzzles in the game, of which there are several, or just climbing about, getting onto roofs, doors, and other little hard to access areas, is the automatic airborne mantle. This is off by default, so when you're jumping and grabbing onto something, normally you need to jump and then press jump again to grab onto the ledge. But if you have this on, then anything you jump towards, you'll automatically mantle to without having to press jump again. You might find this is a little bit annoying sometimes if you didn't want to mantle something, you just wanted to jump forward. Personally, I find it really useful. There's a few jump puzzles, like I said, and getting up those is just super easy with this setting turned on. There's a few strange little noises you hear in this game that at the start took us quite a few days to actually realize what was going on. It kind of sounded like a pig squealing, and we kept looking around wondering where the pigs were hiding on the maps, and we couldn't find anything. Turns out there's two separate squeaky noises that indicate different secrets around the map. First up is meant to be a sort of squeaking rat noise. This tells you there's one of these manholes nearby which you can go up and search. You can actually find pretty good loot in them. The other noise that you hear is a sort of squeaking bird noise apparently, and this means there's a hidden bird's nest nearby. These are usually elevated up, but you do sometimes find them in a bush next to a tree, and again these can be searched and have pretty good items in them. It's worth checking these, not just for the items, but also they quite commonly come up as daily missions to tick off that might unlock other stuff. So just by looking in bird's nests and the manhole covers, you might find you've ticked off a mission and got yourself an extra 100,000 credits. A random little secret that was discovered a little while ago is that when you're on the map button, you'll see that down in the bottom left you have this little Delta Force icon that you can highlight that says no signal next to it, and if you spam click this for a while, after a while it will just randomly give you some items. We think this seems to be tied to your current level. You can only do it every few levels, so if you find it's not working, you've probably already done it too many times. You need to wait till you leveled up a bit, but it does give you some pretty good free stuff in your mailbox just by spamming this button load. So if you've already leveled up a bunch, you can go and do this and get yourself a few freebies. Next up, I wanted to talk about auctions. So when I first started playing this game, a lot of stuff I would just instinctively highlight and go to auction and chuck it in, because you click on a thing, you see merchant price 10,400, reference price 11,700. So I'm like, cool, okay, well, you go and auction that, makes sense, you're gonna make money, and just click and chuck it in the auction without even thinking about it. But what I wasn't really looking at was the actual expected revenue, because they take handling fees from the auction. So if you hover over here, it says total price, handling fee, upfront deposit, and would actually make 10,533 if we sold that in the auction, rather than 10,455 if we sold it to the merchant. Almost no difference at all, and quite a lot of items you'll find actually you would sell for more by selling them directly than you would by selling it in the auction house. This memory card, for instance, 6369 to sell to the merchant. If we sell it at auction, we'd actually only get 6263, so we'd actually get less for selling this at auction. So just something to keep in mind when you're selling things at auction. Some things you can sell for a lot more than they say they're worth, but some things will actually sell for less than you get just for selling them straight up to a trader. Also with auctions, remember that once you sell things or things fail to sell, you'll need to manually deal with those. When you sell things in the auction, you need to go to your mail tab, the auction house tab, and claim all to actually get the money there. It's just going to sit there until you claim it. You don't get it automatically. And if you put something in the auction house and it doesn't sell after a period of time, you'll actually need to go to auction on the top tab, then go to list, and you'll find stuff in there that's expired, and you need to manually remove it before you can use that slot again. When you're in game, a really handy little tip is to take ammo out of enemy guns. You can do that by just hovering over them and doing unload ammo, or you can go into the details page and do it through there. But as well as unloading ammo, you can also take attachments off of enemy guns. So if you don't want to take their whole weapon, but it has some nice attachments in it, open up the details tab, drag a few attachments in that you want, and you can just leave the gun on the ground. Great little space saving tip. Guns obviously pretty massive, so if you just want to take a couple of attachments that can be pretty valuable in themselves, then this is a really great way to do it. Another good little operator trick, because if you're playing as Luna, the one with the detection arrow and the electricity arrow, or the volt arrow as it's called, actually has a couple of different settings. If you click the right mouse button, it will pop up on screen to toggle between bounce on or bounce off, and with it off, then this arrow will just fire straight into whatever you shoot it at, and that's where the little electric arrow will be. But if you put bounce on, it will do one bounce wherever it hits and go a bit further. So it can be useful for trying to get some extra distance or just having a bit of fun with it, ricocheting it off a wall, stuff like that. Just a handy little setting to know about if you like playing as Luna. Something I covered in a previous video was talking about loadouts and gear sets. So as well as being able to save and create your own custom loadouts in the loadout tab, as discussed in my previous video, which I will link to on screen, screen, there's also the gear sets tab here where you can select these preset gear sets. There's recruit, standard, and elite ones depending on which ones you have, and use tokens to get these gear sets. You can buy new recruit ones each day. Standard and elite you get through events and missions, and when you select one of these gear sets, you'll be locked to using only that equipment for the duration of this game. So for instance, if I select this mini 14 set here and we do confirm, it's a nice cheap way to just get up and go straight into a game without having to set up anything from my stash, or if you've completely run out of money, you can do this. But one thing you can't do with these gear sets is particularly modify them. If I go to stash, you see it says standard issue gear in use, and even though we've just got this vehicle med kit here, it means I can't actually put in any bandages or any other stuff I might want to take along with me. My backpack, everything is locked. But what you can use is actually your Safebox. So if I grab a basic surgical kit or two, I can actually chuck them in there, and if I want another med as well, I can pop those in there. I can actually take all 4 of these meds into the game and then use them in the match. When I go here, I could do confirm. It's going to tell me there's items in my safe box, but don't worry about that. It's just telling me about those meds that we just put in there, and you could go into game now and play, take those meds out and have a gear set, but with a little bit extra stuff with you. You can only put certain things in here, so you can't put helmets, stuff like that in. You couldn't take in, for instance, a good helmet like this to go with this gear set. You can put ammo in, you can put meds in, you could take items in if you particularly wanted to, but you can't take attachments or armor. So keycards are a really useful thing that you can find around the maps, or you can buy them. You'll have noticed lots of keycard doors that you want to get into. These are either rare items that you find knocking around. I found them on bosses, found them in random spawn locations. They're just pretty rare depending on the value of them. And you can also buy them in the auction site. If you go to keycards, you can see there's all sorts of ones available for various costs here. Some very cheap, access to a tiny room. Some very expensive, and they give access to massive rooms with loads of loot in them. But once you get one of these keycards, they have a certain amount of uses on them. They have 20 uses, and use 1 use every time you use it on normal mode, and it uses more uses if you're playing on higher difficulties. Something to keep in mind, if you find one of these keycards, then you can only sell them at auction if they're completely unused. So if you find yourself a 3 million credit keycard and you decide to use it once and then you think you're going to sell it, you're not going to be able to sell it at auction for loads of money. So you can still sell it, but not via the auction house, and it'll be a drastically reduced cost. So if you do think you want to sell it, you need to sell it without using it. Otherwise, just to commit to giving it a go. To be honest, I think they're really fun to use, particularly if you use it on the higher difficulties. You can actually get some really good loot in some of the bigger rooms, but obviously, it's pretty tempting when you get one that you might be able to sell for 2 or 3 million. As well as that, another useful thing to know for keycards is that when you use one in game, you'll actually get a short cooldown period where no one else can steal your loot. So you might be used to running around with your teammates and trying to get to the safe first or the loot boxes first because everyone's fighting over the same loot. But when you use your expensive keycard, when you go in there, every container in there has a countdown of about 45 seconds where only you can pick up items from it. So it gives you a little bit of time to just go through, take out the loot, and then your teammates can come in and pick up your leftovers. You don't need to panic. You get a little bit of time to play with. So one last thing I wanted to cover was we talked about loadouts briefly earlier. As I said, I talked about them in detail on my other video. You can see some of my preset loadouts I've made here. But as well as these full loadouts you can also just make loadouts for individual guns. So you can do this through all sorts of ways you can access your guns. But if you go to Gunsmith, for instance, and we go and find a rifle like the SG552, for instance, and we have this one here which has a bunch of fancy attachments on it. If we want, maybe we can add some different attachments to that. We'll put on this suppressor and do preview or whatever else you want to put on this gun. What you can then do is if you go to the loadout tab up here, you can see my current modification. If I select save, I can actually save that as a custom loadout, and it's going to appear here. And so then if I lose my SG552, I can actually just go back to my gunsmith, find this custom gun, and just buy it all in one go with all the attachments on it, one click, rather than having to go through and build it all again. So I'd really recommend, if you have a favorite gun, favorite loadout styles, go and create some loadouts for your gun, some alternative ones, and then it's very easy to go back and get your favorite gun with just one click, rather than having to rebuild it again every single time. As you can see, you can do 5 different loadouts for each individual gun. That's not just 5 total. So if I went back now to gunsmith, we could select something else like, I don't know, M249 or whatever. whatever, do preview, shove on some random attachment to that, and go back. Who doesn't love an M249 with a suppressor? And go to loadout and save. You can see I've got 5 slots again here. So 5 different slots for every gun in the game, which I think is pretty decent. So that's everything for today. If you enjoyed this video, then why not check out some of my other tips and guides for Delta Force Hawk Ops, containing loads more handy tips and guides to some of the hidden secrets in the game. Also, if you've got any other tips of your own that you think I might have missed, then leave them in the comments down below and vote up your favorite ones. Thanks very much for watching. My name's Ben, we are the Beard Guys, and I'll see you next time.